A plain white t-shirt stained with memories from years ago, an apron that has seen better days, and a pair of worn-out blue jeans. This is the outfit of the day for Wednesday. The stove hums softly on low fumes, a well-seasoned aluminum frying pan basking in its heat. Vegetables, freshly chopped, sit neatly inside refrigerator boxes, waiting to be used later. But they won't be. Not today. Not ever. The place I work at is called Fog, Walkthrough and Restaurant. As the name suggests, souls pass by, collect their food, and move on if they're alone. But if there's a group, they sit upstairs in the restaurant section, except no one does. The restaurant hasn't been operational for ages due to low footfall, so management never bothered keeping it open. The tables and chairs still sit there, collecting dust, abandoned yet stubbornly present. I heard they're cutting costs just to keep this place running. It's a small joint, and there's no one else working here. Just me, a fully utilized intern paid in food and experience. Classic corporate setup. No souls have passed through in a long time, intentionally or otherwise. And since it's only 10 minutes before closing, I'm looking forward to doing absolutely nothing except sleeping in the same place I've been for centuries. A plain white t-shirt, an apron with history, and blue jeans. Outfit of the day for Thursday. It's a special day, my last as an intern. Staring out of the window, waiting for someone to show up, I reminisce about the people and the customers who once came through, even if they were few and far between. It's been a good run, 999 years, 11 months, and 30 days. Smiling at the thought, I shift my gaze slightly downward and notice a woman standing outside. Dressed in white, she looks at me with confusion plastered on her face. Finally, a customer. I approach her. What would you like to eat? Eat? I don't know, she mutters, still looking lost. Where am I? I've heard this before, countless times. I know exactly how this plays out, thanks to my almost millennia-long internship. You're dead. This is your last meal. You can order anything. Quantity doesn't matter. You can even get some packed for your journey to the gate of decision. And no, you won't be charged. It's on the house. Once you've eaten, you'll walk to the bus station, where a bus will take you to your destination. I gulp. Emphasis on dead. Ma'am. I blurt it all out in one breath because I already know her follow-up questions. She starts crying. Maybe I went too fast. Then again, this reaction isn't new. I hand her a tissue, expecting her to take her time. But to my surprise, she asks for the menu between sobs. I can't cry when my stomach's asking for food, she says, wiping her tears. There's no menu, I reply. You order based on what you crave. Any dish from any era, any place. Spiciness, quantity, however you want it. Any odd detail. 3 Whopper chicken burgers, hold the tomatoes, add olives instead. 3 10-inch square pizzas, double cheese margherita with button mushrooms on top. From Burger King and Pizza Hut, respectively. She doesn't stop. She starts smiling. That's just the main course. For starters, 1 malai chap with spring rolls. Make the edges crunchy. Don't forget the sauces. For drinks, can I order beer? I nod. Great. 12 pints of Corona beer, chilled. And 2 liters of fountain coke, no ice. This is a first. No one has ever ordered this much after finding out they're dead. I raise an eyebrow. Anything for dessert? 10 slices of New York, blueberry, and Japanese cheesecakes. She practically drools. And that's all, folks. I chuckle. She grins. I snap my fingers, keeping eye contact, expecting the order to appear instantly on the counter as usual. But she keeps looking at me. I glance down. Nothing. Odd. She tilts her head. Can I take a stroll while my order's prepared? That's when it clicks. This is a large family order. It won't appear here. It's waiting inside the restaurant. Your order is served. Please, come inside and be seated, I say, gesturing to the stairs. She climbs up, and I follow. The moment she sees the table, she gasps. This is the best day of my life, she says, unfazed, before plopping down in front of the feast. Steam rises from the fresh food, filling the dusty air with life, or whatever the equivalent is here. She looks at me. Our eyes meet for 3 seconds. Then, she reaches for another chair, drags it back, and gestures for me to sit. I hesitate. No one's ever invited me before. Please, she says, her voice cracking. She looks like she might cry again. And I am not in the mood for another rainy day. I sigh, pull out a chair, and sit across from her. She stares at the table, overwhelmed by choices. Why is there only one table and 4 chairs? What if more people show up? I'm not moving. They'll have to wait. And boy, they'll have to wait a long time. Small talk. I never liked it. Most souls just eat, ask a few predictable questions. How did they die? What happens after? Where does the bus take them? Monotonous stuff. But while I'm lost in thought, she suddenly asks something no one has ever asked me before. And I wasn't prepared for it. Please eat with me. I won't be able to finish it all, even if I'm born again. And please don't say no, I hate wasting food. She looked at me with full-on puppy eyes. Then why did you order so much? I asked, without a second thought. She hesitated at first, but then sighed, as if mentally debating whether to tell me the truth. Because you look like my long-time crush. I always wanted to eat with him, spend time with him, at least as long as the food lasted. So, panic order. Well, that explains it. I wasn't sure if I was even allowed to eat. No one had ever asked me to before. I mean, I knew I wouldn't get in trouble. But why not make my last day worth remembering? I'll have the Coke. Can't be drunk at work, I said. Her face lit up. That smile alone could bring the dead back to life. Which, ironically, is not how things work here. We started eating. Somewhere between bites of pizza and sips of Coke, she finally asked, "So, how did I die?" That's the thing. Most souls don't remember their death. They recall the day before, maybe even the hours leading up to it. But the moment of death? That part's erased. That's where I come in. This is the gate of decision. I'm the one who decides where she goes next. Either she moves on to the afterlife or gets sent back to earth as a wandering soul, essentially serving jail time for the sins she committed. And she has no clue. I tapped on my tablet, scrolling through her information. All right, let's start with the basics. Your name is Mansi, I said, scanning the screen. Your age is irrelevant right now. People who loved you when you were alive. Also irrelevant. She raised an eyebrow. Wow. Okay. Way to make a girl feel special. I ignored that and scrolled further. Yeah. So, you died in a car accident. You were the one driving. Drunk. And, well, a few more souls went with you. Ma'am, someone in the records department must be fuming right now because you just increased their workload. She winced. Well, you know, women drivers. She tried to hide her face behind a plate. It didn't work. My tablet didn't just provide information. It also had the option to show her a video presentation of her final moments. A full recap, if you will. She must have noticed me hovering over the option because she quickly changed the subject. Yeah, we can talk about my death later. First, tell me about you. Do you have a girlfriend? How old are you? How long have you been working here? This woman. I was definitely leaning towards sending her back as a wandering soul. I'm single, a few thousand years old, and today is my last day at work. Wait, last day? What happens after today? I opened my mouth to answer, but she interrupted again. Actually, scratch that. How does this whole place work? And why is it called fog? At this point, I was fighting the urge to bang my head against the table. But I had to follow protocol. The ancient HR guidelines, unchanged for centuries, clearly stated, answer all questions correctly and smile. So, I smiled and started explaining. I began to explain this place is called fog because when souls arrive, their memories are hazy. They don't remember how they died. just fragments of their past life. The name fog reflects this temporary amnesia, which only clears up after they eat and learn their fate. The place is called Feast Over the Grave Fog. She chuckled. Not the first time someone found that amusing. Now, as for how this place works, I continued, there are multiple fog franchise across different realms. Souls are assigned randomly to one of them. Time here is frozen, so the day won't end until you've eaten, and the bus won't arrive until then. So, please eat. I took a sip of Coca-Cola while she ate. Slowly, one bite at a time. Hours passed. I glanced at the table. She had managed a few pizza slices, half a burger, 3 cheesecake slices, and a single bite of a spring roll. But the Malai chap vanished. Priorities, I guess. I tasted a few things from the table myself. And just as I got comfortable, she spoke again. Who are you actually? Can I look at your profile and tablet like you did right now for me? She got up from her chair and leaned on towards me, trying to get the tablet. Before she could reach for it, I snapped my fingers. And just like that, she was back in her chair. She grunted. Don't ever do that again. I smirked. I'm an intern. Minimum duration, 500 years. But since my father runs the Department of Death, her eyes widened, her forehead creasing in interest. I had to serve to terms. So, 1,000 years. You know, so he wouldn't get accused of nepotism. Oof. Suffering from success moment, she snorted. Daddy's a hotshot. And yet here you are, sleeping under the same roof where you've been working for the last 1,000 years. Oh yeah, I saw your bed on the way up. She laughed. I wasn't sure if she was mocking my misery or my luck being the Grim Reaper's son. More hours passed. She was still eating, probably the longest anyone had ever kept me occupied. She threw random questions at me. Don't you get bored? Do you ever leave this place? Do you even sleep? I replied with a series of yes and no answers, hoping she'd eventually stop. It felt like days, but she was still only halfway through her meal. I asked if she wanted to pack the rest for her journey, but she was determined to eat everything, like it was her last meal. Well, it was her last meal. It was time to evaluate her. I glanced at my tablet. All right, what do you remember about your last day? I asked, looking at my tab when I heard her burping on fourth beer. Oops, sorry, she said, barely embarrassed. I just had all this after months. Feels like an eternity. I remember I used to weigh equivalent to a semi-truck, she chuckled. I remember this one time. My father introduced me to his friends at a party, calling me a semi-truck in front of everyone. I was 18. That was my birthday party. Even it is known for damaging the relations and organs, it works as a medicine to treat broken heart. I was told by someone who visited this restaurant long ago who used to drink his own creation every single day, which eventually killed him. I winced. That's brutal. No worries. Dude, that was my motivation. That laughter fueled rage inside me, and that rage burned the fat away. Once a semi-truck model, but I turned myself into a sleek race car. I had the last laugh. She chugged her 7th beer. I sighed and took a slice of pizza and a bit of the Japanese cheesecake. Not because I was hungry, just to make this meal end faster. She started rambling again. I was on a strict diet for the last 2 years. Had to kill the lazy girl inside me, the one who's a premium member of every food delivery app. I swear, those companies wouldn't have gone public if it weren't for me ordering 3 times a day. Not a flex, I muttered. She grinned, unfazed. Well, that's all past law now. She leaned back, stretching. Anyway, I am remembering few things. I was going to meet my boyfriend in 6 months. Whatever she was telling me, I was fact-checking right away. Boyfriend, I repeated. Or what your generation calls situationship. I glanced at my tablet. The moment she saw my expression, she sighed, knowing she couldn't lie. Situationship of 6 months, she admitted. Then, narrowing her eyes at me, she added, You're really annoying. You know that? It's unfair that you know everything about me, but I know nothing about you. Perks of working here, I said with a grin. Now, continue. The plates were nearly empty. Just one whole pizza and a few pints of beer remained. She was close to remembering everything, but she needed to finish her last bite before the full truth surfaced. I was driving to meet him. I remember it was a winter evening, dense fog everywhere, like the clouds had decided to take a break and rest on the roads. She took a sip of her beer, staring at the table as if reliving the moment. I couldn't see what was ahead, but I still kept going because my situationship, emphasizing that, told me he had a surprise for me. I thought he was going to propose. She let out a dry laugh. Man, I was really surprised when I arrived. She chugged another pint and let out the longest burp in Fog franchise history. So, I reached the place. It was a dark room with a spotlight at the center. Rose petals arranged in the shape of a heart. A few people stood around it, watching. And then, I saw him, standing in the middle, holding a mic. He started talking about all the things we had shared in the last 6 months. It felt like a proposal. And it was, until she looked up at me. He didn't say my name. I froze mid-bite, my pizza slice hovering in front of my mouth. Not because the story shocked me, I had heard was in my internship, but because she suddenly bolted to the corner of the restaurant and puked for 3 straight minutes. Unfortunately, I saw it happen. There went my appetite. When she returned, looking fresh but deeply embarrassed, I snapped my fingers. A mop and bucket materialized from thin air, cleaned everything up, and disappeared. Don't worry, I said, trying to comfort her. Happens to the best of us. She groaned. God, that was awful. Well, you did just chug 4 pints of beer, I pointed out. She ignored me and continued. After I saw him propose to someone else, I was done. Broken. Ready to disappear off the face of the earth. So, I left the party and went to a random bar. Threw my credit card at the waiter's face and told him to get me drunk. Nice, I muttered. Not my proudest moment, she admitted. I treated him like crap, but I just wanted to forget the day. Then she paused, suddenly realizing something. Wait. Earlier, I said I hadn't had alcohol in months. But here I am, saying I drank that night. Why did I lie? Your memory was hazy when you first arrived, I explained. It's normal. She relaxed. Right. That makes sense. After what felt like years, she finally finished her meal, leaving just one last pint of beer. I was so drunk that the bar employees wouldn't let me leave alone, she said. They refused to give me my credit card back until someone came to pick me up. I was only about 10% conscious at that point, but I used all of it to come up with an excuse to go to the washroom. And that was my cue. I escaped. She sighed, glancing around the restaurant. I guess that was my worst mistake. I nodded in agreement. The streets were dark. Barely any cars. I figured it was safe to drive home. But as I was about to leave, I saw someone running towards my car. Someone from the bar. He was yelling at me, telling me not to drive. And he looked like you. She squinted at me. Was that you? I grinned. Yes. And no. Someone took my form to stop you. Every soul gets a chance. If they listen, they live. If they don't, I didn't need to finish the sentence. She exhaled. I didn't listen. Finish your drink, I reminded her. You'll remember everything once you do. She hesitated, then took a slow sip. I remember now. Her voice was quieter. The fog was still thick. It felt like my legs were stuck to the accelerator. The speed climbed so fast that my body felt like it was being sucked into the seat, like I was entering another galaxy. And then, for some reason, I turned the steering wheel. She paused. And then I slammed into something. She looked up at me, realization dawning on her face. I smiled. Come with me. We walked to the bus stop. She didn't question it. She already knew what was coming. I snapped my fingers. The restaurant reset, tables cleaned, chairs back in place, no stains, no sign of anything that had just happened. She waited outside on the road, looking at me. Thanks, she said, for hearing me out. And for enduring that 3-minute puke session. It's in the job description, I joked. Silence fell between us as we walked. The bus was already waiting for her. She stood at the door, looking at me for the final evaluation. It was unfair. What happened to you? I said. Your father's words on your birthday. That proposal meant for someone else. And that night at the bar, when no one stopped you except a stranger you ignored. She frowned. But, let me tell you something you didn't ask. I pulled up the accident footage. Different angle, different perspectives. Her steering wheel turned because a family of dogs was crossing the road, I said softly. You tried to save them. She gasped. But in doing so, you crashed into another car coming from the opposite direction. You weren't wearing a seatbelt. The airbags didn't deploy. You hit the steering wheel. I skipped the part where her face didn't look as lovely as it did now. She swallowed. Who's in the other car? Thou won't let me disclose that, I said. But let's just say, you met them earlier at a party, where a certain boy proposed to a certain girl. Her eyes widened. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Well, at least I took them with me. I chuckled. Karma works fast sometimes. It was time. Where am I going? She asked. Look at the dashboard, I said. She stepped onto the bus. The doors closed. The engine hummed. And then, her face lit up. The dashboard read, Welcome. Next stop, heaven. She turned to me, smiling, and waved. I waved back. As the bus disappeared into the fog, I took one last look at the restaurant. So many memories. I smiled. Then, I headed to the bus stop, only to find a car waiting instead. My father sat in the driver's seat. He smiled, and we drove off.